Gotta wait for some room in traffic here because we're going to be going fast. But that's not to take away from what Aventon has done with this torque sensor and ride tune. That is how it feels on flat ground, but how does this bike perform up hills? This is the Aventon Pace 5 Rec, Aventon's cruiser e-bike, and it's interesting because they added back in something that was lacking from the previous generation, but was there before. I'm getting ahead of myself, but the launch of this e-bike brings up a very important question, and that is, should you buy the Pace 5 Rec or this level 4 Rec? And so in this video, not only will I break down those differences briefly, but I'll deep dive into all the components on the Pace 5 Rec. We'll walk through all the smart features of the display and the app. Then I'll go for a ride. We'll see what this feels like in boost mode, 1440 watts of peak power, and then I'll wrap things up with the pros and cons. So by the end of the video, you'll have a good idea if this should be your next e-bike. But first, let's take a closer look. So high level, the Pace is more of your cruiser e-bike, and of course the level is more of your aggressive commuter. But that actually doesn't tell the full story because there are a lot of minor differences. But first, on a commuter e-bike, you have straighter handlebars. This still has an adjustable stem, but that's compared to the Pace with the generously swept back handlebars and still an adjustable stem. So if you're into comfort, having a more upright riding position, taking some of the stress off of your hands and your wrists, then the Pace is the route to go. Now the Pace is slightly lighter, and there's a reason for that. You'll notice the rigid front fork compared to the suspension front fork on the level 4 Rec. Both tires are a similar tread pattern, but they are technically 0.1 inches larger on the level 4. You'll notice the lack of accessories on the Pace. No included fenders or rear rack, though they are available for purchase. The level 4 comes with fenders and a rear rack. Here's a slight difference. The Pace has mounting points, so you can add a front rack. The level 4 Rec does not. I love the ability to add some storage here. Now both batteries are bottom load, but this is actually a different design than we saw on the level 4 Rec. And one of my considerations on the level 4 Rec was that the charger port is actually on the battery underneath, but check this out. You have a charger port on the Pace right here, spring loaded. Not surprisingly, on a cruiser e-bike, we have a wider saddle. We'll see how comfortable it is, and that's compared to the more sleek saddle on the level 4. Also check this out, suspension seat post here, but nothing on the Pace. And so if you are looking for comfort on the Pace, that's where I would highly recommend a suspension seat post. Up to you if you want to go with a super wide saddle, but this is the one that we sell at shop.ebikeescape.com. All you need to do is remember to buy the 30.9, and trust me, this is going to make a huge difference when it comes to comfort, especially on a bike with a rigid front fork. So remember, shop.ebikeescape.com for a bunch of high quality e-bike accessories, no matter the e-bike you buy. Now the Pace only comes in a step through like what you see here, but notice the step through is actually lower than on the level 4 Rec. And not only that, but look at the seat tube angles on both of these bikes. This is intended to be a slightly more pedal forward design, which is more comfortable. Now we have the same drivetrain, motor power, and then next, a minor difference is the lighting package. You also get an extra set of bottle cage bosses here on the seat tube. So those are the differences. Now let's focus on the Pace. Current pricing on the Aventon Pace 5 Rec is $17.99. Aventon e-bikes are sold online or in store. If you do buy online, I'd really appreciate it if you use our link in the description or scan the QR code on your screen now before you click that buy button. But if you do buy from one of Aventon's 1,800 plus dealerships, we can still get credit. Simply email me your receipt, Ryan@ebikeescape.com. Certainly appreciate that. The bike is offered in 5 different colors: Anvil, this Lagoon, Sakura, Glacier Mint, or Koi. You can get it in 2 sizes, regular and large, accommodating riders all the way down to 5 feet up to 6'3". This is the size large, and I'm 6 feet tall with a 32-inch inseam. My wife is 5'5". It weighs in at just over 60 pounds and has a 330-pound payload capacity. The bike is IPX5 rated and the bike's components are IPX6. The tires come from Innova. They're 27.5 by 2.1 inches wide, street tread, reflective sidewall. The front wheel attaches with a through axle. There's 2-piston Tektro hydraulic disc brakes, front and rear. Those are paired with 180mm rotors. Nice cable management through the frame and through the adjustable stem. The front light runs off the main battery, attaches to the stem. There's rear running lights. When you brake, they go brighter. And you have turn signals left and right. Moving to the handlebars, matching Tektro hydraulic disc brake levers with motor cutoffs, locking ergonomic rubber grips, a left-hand thumb throttle. On the right side, you have Shimano's 8-speed trigger shifter, and of course that adjustable stem, bring them towards you or further away. It offers a riding position that a lot of people prefer. Next, the controls and display. Power button in the center, turn signals left and right, pedal assist up and down. Note the walk mode and turning the lights on. Underneath the display is a USB-C port for charging any device. Let's turn the display on. Aventon on boot up. Top left, we have the current time. Top right, the battery capacity. There's bars for motor and rider power respectively. Speed front and center. Pedal assist level below that. Off, Eco, Sport, Turbo, and finally Boost. You can turn the lights on by holding pedal assist up, indicator on the screen. You can engage walk mode by holding pedal assist down, and when you release, it goes into hold mode. I literally couldn't move this bike backwards. On the bottom of the screen, we have odometer distance and estimated range, which does depend on the pedal assist level you're in. Hitting the power button will cycle through additional information. Over to rider power and rider torque. I love that it still shows your current pedal assist level. Hitting it again, motor power and motor torque. Next is speed and cadence, odometer time and odometer distance, trip time and trip distance, odometer max speed and trip max speed, and back to the main screen. To get into the advanced settings, hold pedal assist up and down at the same time. We have connect to app, I'll come back to that. Data connection, battery lock. This is how you unlock the battery. Because this bike is keyless, there's bike lock. When I'm in here, if I hit the power button, it's going to engage a pin in the rear here. Now the bike is locked. Someone couldn't ride away with your electric bike. You can clear your trip. There's password, and you do that with the pedal assist up and down buttons and the turn signals. Next is display unit, auto power off time. Screen brightness, you can max it out, set it to auto, or turn it down. Air history, system info. All right, next, let's connect this bike to my app. We'll start on the Me tab. I'll select Pair. On the display, I'll select Connect to App, and we'll scan our QR code. We'll call it the Ebike Escape Pace 5 Rec. It's going to ask me to register my bike. It just prompted for the IoT service. That is something that makes Aventon e-bikes unique because you can track your e-bike, you can know exactly where it is, and it's free for the first year and just $20 per year after that. Very reasonable for the peace of mind that it provides. I'll activate it now. All right, next, because this is a new bike, I'm being notified that there are a few updates that I have to do, which I'll do before our first-person riding footage. If you do nothing else with the Aventon app, make sure your bike is up to date so it's the best it can be. So I'll select later. So you have some quick access items here. You can power off your bike, you can lock it, turn the lights on. I'm also getting a glance at my tracked rides. I rode my Aventon Current this morning. Let's go into settings. So you have display. They actually have some different customizations for the display, which is cool. But where most people want to spend some time is Ride Assist, and specifically in Ride Tune. You can customize each pedal assist level to your liking. So for Eco, Sport, or Turbo, I can adjust the max torque, assistance, or the pedal response. And you have this experience triangle in the bottom. You can also view charts for assistance and pedal response. I'm going to leave the settings stock, but I want to crank turbo all the way up. I'll apply to e-bike. You can enable boost mode if you want. Of course, I want to test that out. In regenerative braking, you can turn braking or coasting regen on or off. And even more than that, you can crank them up or down depending on how much of regen you want to get. So we'll see how that feels in the first-person riding footage. You can select between the torque or the cadence sensor here, and importantly, change your top speed. up to 28 miles per hour while pedaling. Throttle will stop at 20. Next is security and anti-theft. You can track your bike and see where it actually is. Set an alarm. Have it auto lock when you power the bike off. That's handy. There's security verification. There's unusual activity detection. Yes, it will actually give you a notification on your phone if someone is messing around with your bike. Super handy. You can set your bike password. There's geofencing. You can either allow or restrict certain areas. So I live in Bentonville. Maybe I only want this bike to be ridden in Bentonville. It's also a nice security measure, and you can drag these points out. There's bike sharing, so you can add members to be able to ride your bike. And in system and maintenance, you can view additional information on your battery, like how many charge cycles. This is where I would update the firmware, which I'll do. Backup and restore. You can see the status of your IoT service. Enable transport mode. You don't want the alarm to go off while you're transporting your e-bike. Ask me how I know. And finally, you can restore default settings. Under the Ride tab, you can view your rides over days, months, and the year. I haven't been tracking my rides with my phone, but my bike has been, which is pretty cool. 351 miles so far on Aventon e-bikes. The way you track a ride is simply hit the go button and tap start. There's the Discover tab. You can see what other Aventon owners are up to. And on the Me tab, you can view your profile, see what medals you have earned, and you can follow different riders. Like you guys could follow me. I have 0 followers. Who's going to be the first? And that is it for the controls, display, and Aventon's app. Remember, this bike is keyless, so let's remove the battery. It will partially release and then push down on the handle. There's that grab handle. It's a 36 volt, 20 amp hour battery. The battery is certified to UL2271. The entire bike's electronics are certified to UL2849. You can get an idea of the capacity by pushing this button right here. Charger port right here. Or a secondary option, which is going to be easier to access, lifting up this cover. To charge the battery up, you get a 4 amp charger, so 5 hours to charge the battery up from empty. You also get a multi-tool, some stickers, bike grease, as well as reflectors and an additional derailleur hanger. To put the battery back in, terminals first, and simply snap into place. There's plastic pedals, a rear-mounted kickstand, cruiser-style seat. The motor is 750 watts, 1440 watts in boost mode, engaged with either a torque or a cadence sensor. And let's not forget, it has regenerative coasting and braking, which I'll talk about all of that. It's a Shimano Altus derailleur, 12 to 32 teeth, again, 8 speeds. Up front is a single-sided 48 tooth chainring. With that, let's go for a ride and see how the bike performs. All right, let's start with throttle only, see how fast we can get to 20. 3, 2, 1, throttle only. And 18, there's 20. The highest I saw was 914 watts on the display. Now, let's briefly talk about regenerative coasting and regenerative braking, because this is something that you just don't see in the industry today. And I think it's cool that Aventon included it. Having ridden this bike around quite a bit, you definitely notice the regenerative coasting. I have it cranked all the way up. And so if I'm just going down this hill at 20 miles an hour and I stop pedaling, I'm going to see on the display, and I can feel it too, it is really slowing me down. So it's something that if you are always pedaling and then coasting when you want to come to a stop, maybe you want to leave that cranked up, though I imagine some people will want to turn it down because it is pretty noticeable. And yes, of course, you can turn it off if you don't want it at all. I just turned it down to 3, and I can still feel it slowing me down, just not quite as much. Regenerative braking, on the other hand, I don't know why you wouldn't crank that up, because why not? Save a little bit on your brake pads and also just get a little extra range, conserve some battery. So when you hit the brakes, you can see there's a bar on the display and it goes higher. Kind of the faster you're going, I've noticed, it's just showing you how much power is going to the battery. Now, is this going to give you an insane increase of range? No, but I'd rather have it than not have it, that's for sure. And we'll see when I get to the hill climb test. Maybe I'll test the regenerative braking out a little bit more. All right, now let's go through the various pedal assist levels. We are going to start with the torque sensor, and perhaps you'll see why in a second. I have it in Eco, first gear, instantly responsive. Like as soon as you press on the pedal, you feel the motor responding. And by the way, I just want to add that I love that Aventon added some of the cool information within this display. Like I can see how many watts the motor is currently giving me, just 42 watts. Let me shift up into third gear. So if you aren't familiar, a torque sensor, it's actually measuring my pedal pressure. The harder I push on the pedals, the more power I'll get from the motor. Of course, depending on the pedal assist level still, think of it as rewarding you for putting in more power. And what I like about this torque sensor is in third gear, I can just cruise at 10 miles an hour, just getting 60 watts, a little bit more leg power, getting closer to 150, and going 13 or 14 miles an hour. Still a cadence I could do for a long time. All right, let's jump into sport. We'll see kind of what the cruising speed is there. All right, now still in third gear, but cruising a little bit faster at 13 miles an hour. I'm going to shift up to fourth gear and a little bit more power from my legs, 15, 16. I saw 200 watts. And let's see if we can hit 20. I'm going to shift up to fifth gear here. And there we go, still 20 miles per hour. In sport, not too bad. All right, let's go into turbo. Remember, we still have boost to talk about, which is just that, a temporary boost of power. Now getting consistently 2 to 250 watts consistently from the motor without too much effort from my own legs. So in sixth gear, cruising at 18, 19 miles an hour, and then just a little bit more power from my legs. This is where the torque sensor is very responsive. Now up to 22. I'm going to shift up into seventh gear. 25, not hard at all. All right, let's see if we can hit 28. There's 26, and we are now getting 500, between 5 and 600 watts from the motor. So I would say 25, 26, still pretty darn easy. And then more power from my legs, 27, and I'm seeing close to 900 watts and 27 miles an hour. Quickly, before we go into boost, you know how I talked about how Aventon can make updates? There's now a setting within the display where you can change your start pedal assist. So if you just want, when you turn the bike on, for it to be on turbo, you can do that. All right, gotta wait for some room in traffic here because we're going to be going fast. All right, here we go, eighth gear, boost. All right, there we go. All right, 1,280 watts when I switched to it, and wow, I hit 28 miles per hour and didn't even notice. So yeah, just shy of 1,300 watts on the display. And I'm not going to say you don't have to work for it at all, but it's pretty darn easy. Okay, now the cadence sensor. This is an interesting one. Why, you might be wondering? Well, normally a cadence sensor, as long as you're spinning your legs, you're getting power from the motor, of course, depending on the pedal assist level. And that doesn't really change. It's just a consistent amount of power. But what Aventon has decided to do is actually the faster you spin your legs, you're going to get more power from the motor. So we'll start in Eco here. First gear, just spinning my legs nice and easy, getting 220 watts as you'd expect from a cadence sensor. But then the interesting thing is, if I spin my legs faster, I get more power from the motor, just shy of 500 watts. So kind of as I shift up higher, it's harder to get power or more power from the motor than if you shift down. But right now I'm in sixth gear here, and I'm in Eco and barely providing any power. And I'm already going 24 miles an hour. I am going down a slight hill here, so let's slow down. So yeah, sixth gear, 20 miles an hour. Personally, what I would have liked to see is have the power delivery scaled back. And remember, on this cadence sensor, it is not impacted by ride tune. That is the torque sensor only that you can customize. So you can probably imagine that if I go into sport here, I'm going to shift up into seventh gear, eighth gear. So I'm cruising at 25 miles an hour, 26, spinning my legs nice and easy, getting just shy of 700 watts. There's 27 miles an hour. Let's go into turbo. I mean, there's not much more power to give. There is 28. So I guess the cadence sensor is an option, but I think part of the challenge is just that it almost gives you too much power too easily, even going up that slight hill, 16 miles an hour. But that's not to take away from what Aventon has done with this torque sensor and ride tune, because I think it feels really natural and it's really responsive, and you can tune those 3 pedal assist levels how you want, and then you have boost. And I did change coasting regen to 1, and after riding it this little bit, I haven't noticed it. Let's stop pedaling here for a second. I mean, maybe that I can see the bar, I can feel it a little bit, but it's going to certainly be less noticeable. And then we have this huge hill, so let's test out braking regen again. Pulling on the brakes just enough to slow me down a little bit, and that bar is about halfway for the regen. If I squeeze harder, it doesn't do anything. So that's just how much energy is going in. And now as I get down to the bottom, and I'm just barely using the brakes, it did go higher for a little bit longer. So that is how it feels on flat ground, but how does this bike perform up hills? Let's find out. All right, this hill looks so much smaller on the GoPro than it actually is, so we'll put the specs on the screen. We'll get up to 20 miles per hour and we will see what the minimum speed is, and I'll also see how much power we're getting from the motor. 1,000 watts. There's 16 miles an hour, 15. All right, so just shy of 1,000 watts now. 14 for a second, now holding at 14. I can hear the motor a little bit. It is working pretty hard to get us up this huge hill. So 14 miles per hour was the minimum speed. Held me just shy of 1,000 watts on throttle alone. But this is an electric bike, so let's see how it does while pedaling. Before that though, let's do a little brake test at this mailbox. All right. I always love seeing Tektro hydraulic disc brakes on electric bikes because I think they're tried and true. I've never had issues with them. Confident stopping power. All right, here we go. We're going to use the torque sensor because I think that's what most people will use if they buy this bike. All right, in eco and first gear, just getting a little bit of power from the motor, 150 watts. I think I could do this, but it would be a decent amount of work. Let's go up to sport. All right, some relief there. Okay, 230 watts or so. And as long as I'm keeping my legs spinning, cruising up at 5 or 6 miles an hour, can feel a slight burn in my legs. Let's go into turbo. All right, that's where the torque sensor takes over a little bit, getting closer to 300 watts and just a little bit more leg power. I'm getting closer to 400 watts, but let's see what boost does here. All right, 400 watts. Let me shift up. All right, there we go. A little bit easier for me to provide pedal pressure, getting closer to 600 watts. So you're not quite getting the full 1,000 watts that you get with the throttle. Of course, you could just use the throttle and pedal alongside the bike. So that brings up an important point. You might want to use the cadence sensor on hills. All right, we are in eco now. I'm in first gear. All right, and already, I can tell I'm going to go up the hill easier because I just saw it saying 300 watts. So yeah, at least in eco, it is noticeable that you're getting more power from the motor, but I imagine if we go into sport, all right, there we go. All right, 400 watts in sport. Let's go into turbo and see if it takes over even more. Okay, so now in first gear, yeah, 600 watts, and I'm barely spinning my legs. Still only going up at around 10 miles an hour, and I know this motor has even more power in it. But you can always use that throttle again for additional support. All right, let's talk briefly about ergonomics. So this is your cruiser setup. It feels like a lot of cruiser e-bikes on the market. Swept back handlebars, adjustable stem. I actually would probably raise the handlebars even more towards me, which I can do with that adjustable stem. The seat is actually pretty comfortable. Maybe not the best seat, but certainly not the worst. Feels pretty cushy. And of course, no front suspension or suspension C-post. But remember, there's always trade-offs. This bike is lighter thanks to that rigid front fork. So if you're just on paved paths, you probably don't care about that. But yeah, this is the Pace geometry that didn't exist quite like this in the last generation, but had kind of been their standard even before that. And of course, you have that more pedal forward design. All right, with that, let's get into some third-person riding footage. I will give you the pros and cons of the Aventon Pace 5 Rec. I think we're about to see a lot more Pace models on the road with the introduction of the Pace 5 Rec. That's not to say there aren't a few considerations, but let's start with what I really like. First off, Aventon's network of over 1,800 dealers is a huge bonus. Just being able to sit on the bike and know you have local service offers a peace of mind that many riders appreciate. And don't forget, if you do buy in store, you can still support the channel by emailing me your receipt at ryan@ebikeescape.com. Now, the Pace 5 Rec really goes back to its roots, offering that traditional cruiser style frame that completely prioritizes comfort. You get a comfortable seat, swept-back handlebars, and an adjustable stem. It's step-through only, but comes in 2 frame sizes, which isn't always a given, plus that pedal-forward design. It's not exactly lightweight, but it is lighter than many alternatives thanks to that rigid front fork. I'm also really digging all of the color options that Aventon came out with, and the fact that Aventon included mounting points for their front rack. One thing to note is that the down tube is noticeably elongated. If you're on the shorter side, I highly recommend sitting on it in store to check out the reach. That said, Allie and I both got a great fit on the size large. Aventon really stepped up the power here, and you can really feel it. It hits class 3 speeds without making you break a sweat. There's a new boost mode for that extra oomph of power, peaking at a massive 1440 watts, though keep in mind there is a pretty long timeout before you can use it again. Between the torque sensor and the Ride Tune app features, the pedal assist just feels completely dialed in. The battery will give you up to 75 miles in eco mode and probably around 40-ish miles of heavy throttle or turbo usage. Regenerative coasting and braking might not be game-changing on their own, but they are a welcome and unique addition. However, it's really Aventon's smart tech that shines on this bike. I could barely finish this review and Aventon was already rolling out new features. My favorites are definitely the locking rear wheel, the built-in alarm and GPS tracking, of course the alerts as well that tell you if your bike has been moved. The integrated lighting package adds visibility, though it's worth noting the integrated turn signals are a bit on the smaller side on this model. Plus, Aventon's new display gives you all sorts of nerdy data points if you want to look at those, and of course you have the app for tracking your rides. Aventon outfitted the Pace 5 Rec with reliable components, including Tektro hydraulic disc brakes for solid stopping power, the Shimano trigger shifter, and an Altus derailleur. No complaints there. Now for the considerations. Because there's no front suspension fork, this is an e-bike you'll likely want to keep on paved roads and paths. A suspension C-post goes a long way in soaking up minor bumps, and I really wish they included one here. The same goes for fenders and a rear rack. While omitting them saves weight, I know a lot of our audience prefers to have those accessories included out of the box so they don't have to think about buying them or, importantly, installing them. If that sounds like you, for $200 more, you can step up to the heavier level, which includes all of those items. Just note the level is more of their commuter model, and you might want to check our review out on that one as well. Regarding the cadence sensor, I'd love to see Aventon decrease the power delivery significantly, or just allow Ride Tune to control the cadence sensor settings as well. As it stands, I think most people will just stick to using the torque sensor, which is honestly fine. I also think there's an opportunity here for Aventon to offer some throttle customization, so you could tune the power delivery just like you do with the pedal assist. Because trust me, the throttle offers a lot of power. If we've helped you with your Aventon purchase decision, remember to use our link in the description or scan the QR code on your screen now before you buy. And if you're buying at a local shop, simply email me your receipt, ryan@ebikeescape.com. Thank you guys so much for your support. It really helps us out. Aventon really delivered with the Pace 5 Rec, giving riders the choice of a classic, comfortable cruiser packed with all the modern tech you could imagine. I'm curious to hear what you think, so let me know down in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.